She was a lab technician, a union activist, and a whistleblower. After dangerous levels of radiation were found on her body, she began investigating her workplace. On her way to meet a journalist with her findings, she died in a suspicious car crash and her documents went missing. Today, we're investigating the mysterious death of Karen Silkwood. This is Red Web. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Red Web, the podcast all about unsolved mysteries, true crime, and the paranormal. I am your resident mystery enthusiast, Trevor Collins, and joining me hearing this case for the very first time, Alfredo Diaz.
Ooh, this is going to be covering some deep conspiracies. I'm very interested, like, how prolific this workplace is to be covering up such secrets. To the point where they could possibly murder someone.
Right.
You know, like workplace has got secrets, you know what I mean? Whatever skeletons are in the closet. But like to be able to have someone be like, I'm going to take this information and I'm going to like let everybody know, and to have a company be scrambling like to the point. I mean, I'm assuming it's like if this got out, we would be over type situation.
It would have to be,
right?
If you're erasing someone,
yeah.
right? Or supposedly, right? That's a theory.
Right, which is the theory. And so, like again, how prolific is this workplace? And like, what are the documents? Like,
what are the documents? What is being hidden?
What is happening here? Already, like, that's the hook, you know? What is happening here behind closed doors?
Oh, yeah. This is a really interesting case. There's a few holes in it that make you go, ooh, was that there or was it not? So a lot of conspiracy hinges on, as you can imagine, some flimsy details that could go either way. Karen Silkwood, a brilliant lab technician in her own right. We're going to talk about her whole background from youth growing up, and then how she kind of found her way to this plutonium plant. We'll talk about that company a little bit. We'll talk about the radiation element. I'll do a crash course in radiation for you if you want. We'll talk about alpha and beta decay. We'll get into it. I'll geek out a little bit.
Okay. We're talking plutonium. Okay. All right. Now I'm kind of seeing the picture here. That's big, worldwide affecting stuff right there.
Oh, yeah. We're getting into nuclear, okay? And so now you start to picture some of the conspiracy that can come to this, and then the accident, and of course, a little bit of the investigation, what was found on the other side of this accident. And of course, as we always do, we'll button it up with some of the leading theories and our own thoughts on the matter. But as we dive in, as always, I want to give a huge shout out to the task force members that support us directly. We've got Bobby Benbow, the buff scientist. Maybe they're a lab technician. We don't know. But I trust they are. You know, honorary lab technician. And then, of course, our squonks of the week. We got Sabrina Hall, TGYK94, and Gavin Day. So, Task Force, if you're listening and you want to support the show directly, you can do so and get access to weekly exclusives over at redwebpod.com. We'll talk more about those exclusives at the end of the show. That's very nice, past self, but I'm jumping in here now, Fredo, because we have some news, some timely news.
Some amazing news.
Amazing news. Task Force, with your support and our partners and friends over at Spotify, we wanted to talk about this from the rooftops. We've launched into the podcast charts, okay?
Just skyrocketed up there.
We've become one of them behemoths, one of the giants for a day. But because of you guys sharing, supporting, reviewing, and our friends at Spotify featuring our podcast, we have jumped to number 12 in all of true crime podcasts here on Spotify. And at least right now, we're at 65 in all of podcasts, number 65.
We're under 100 of all the pod. You know how many people's uncles have podcasts? You know what I'm saying? Like we're up there, dude. That's awesome.
True, dude. Out of all the podcasts in the world, your support, Task Force, kind of keeping this thing going, especially as we approach our Indieversary next week. We'll have been independent for 1 year. We're approaching our 5-year birthday in July, which we have some big plans for. So stay tuned for that. But yeah, we're just absolutely gobsmacked and over the moon. So thank you guys so much. Very much appreciate you. And also while we're here, while we're interrupting our past selves, another small announcement. Mark your calendars next Monday. We'll remind you in that episode, June 2nd. Fredo, we've been doing some development work, okay?
Well, it's a Sippy Cup pro model.
We have developed the pro model of the sippy cup,
which you deemed an episode that we recorded just some moments ago as the adult model.
Okay, that accidentally happened.
Yeah, and then right before we recorded this, you said it was touch.
It was touch activated, which again, I don't know what our scientists mean when they say that, so I'm not gonna market it as that, but I will market it as what it is. It is an insulated cup that will keep your beverage cold. It can fit in cup holders, unlike the old one, this spherical monster. But it's the pro model, so you can take it to the office like a professional, and you won't get laughed at, okay? Mm-hmm. And again, emerging technologies have enabled this beautiful craft of a cup. So distill that knowledge down, tuck it in there like Fredo does, and just kind of sip on that throughout the day. But you can get that next Monday, June 2nd, 2025, just in case you're listening in the year 2038, at sippycup.pro. That's right, we did get a URL for it. And we also have merch at store.redwebpod.com. You can go get that anywhere. But yes, it will be available next week. You can't sell it out this time. Last time it sold out in 30 minutes.
It did.
So we tinkered away in the background to make sure it's impossible. I think it's impossible.
Yeah.
I'll put that challenge to you, Task Force. If you somehow sell it out, you emptied the world's supply.
And put whatever kind of knowledge you want to put in there. Is it knowledge of mysteries? Sure. Is it knowledge of Akatar? Why not?
Tell them.
Sip away.
Are we talking Feyre? Are we talking the Spring Court? Or are you more of a Night Court entity, okay? Are you more of a Rhysand fan? Listen, my headcanon while we're here, Rhysand is Matt Berry. People hate it. I love it. I think Matt Berry is Rhysand.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I was also told to look at Den of Vipers, which essentially, I was like, what does that mean? Is it Den of Dongs? And they said, pretty much, yes.
Okay. Well,
so put whatever knowledge you want into the Sippy Cup Pro. It is the adult model.
It's the model for adults and professionals. Professional adults. And, honestly, anybody can sip out of this. It's not just for adults.
No, you want to put Bluey
a professional toddler,
You watch Bluey, go for it.
Bluey can go in there. Grandpa's watching Yellowstone again. Tuck that in there. Just whatever. Okay.
It is a huge way to support us, and we thank you very much.
Yes. Thank you very much. It's coming out next Monday. Mark your calendars. We'll remind you. And now we relinquish it back to our past selves. But with that said, we have a lot to dive into. Fredo, any last minute thoughts, questions as we dive in?
Well, now we're talking about plutonium. I feel like from there, it's not just the company that could step in, it's the government.
Ooh, okay. So it's, what? When it
escalated.
Yes. When a conspiracy comes rolling around, someone's always got to throw the government in the ring. Just any old government.
Oh, yeah.
They got to be in play. Absolutely. Because there's safety in play. Things went down in the mid 1900s. It was wild out there. It was like the Wild West of unclassified top secret stuff.
Yeah, that's true.
We were really fumbling around with some space travel, some radiation. It was weird.
It's a wild, wild time.
But with that, let's go back in time. Karen Silkwood was born on February 19th, 1946 in Longview, Texas. She was the eldest of 3 sisters, and for most of her childhood, she lived with her family in Nederland, Texas. Her interest in chemistry sparked in high school, and upon graduating, she attended Lamar College in Beaumont, Texas. So I want to paint a vivid picture here of the person we're dealing with, because growing up, she was very bright. She was a well-rounded student. She was on her high school volleyball team. She played the flute in the marching band. She was on the National Honor Society. And she was the only girl in her high school chemistry class, which actually displeased her mother, said, hey, maybe you should do home economics, right? We're talking about the 40s and 50s here a little bit.
Right, yeah.
But despite that, she was one of the most brilliant students in the class, outperforming all the boys in her class, and so her mother said, okay, fine, let's do it. So we're talking about a really well-rounded, brilliant student. In fact, she received a full scholarship from the Business and Professional Women's Club to study medical technology. However, she left school after her first year and eloped with an oil pipeline worker named William Meadows. Young love, sometimes it's strong.
Young love, man. Look, she's going down her career path. It's even though she doesn't want to go down the traditional path for women during that time, doesn't mean she doesn't want to settle down.
True.
Have a nice little house with the kids and dog, possibly. You know what I mean? That's still there.
Absolutely. They got that dream, and when you get that look in your eye and you see those beautiful blue or brown or green or hazel or whatever they were.
You just start thinking every kiss begins with K, you know what I'm saying?
Not a sponsor, but could be. Listen, I just got married. I feel the love is
Married
in the air
boy.
right now. My voice is still a little raspy from the dance floor. I'm exhausted.
Oh, where's that
But I'm
ring?
in love.
Where's that
Here it
ring?
is. Here
Clean.
it is.
That's clean.
All right, so she marries William Meadows. Now, the couple had 3 children together, and I'm jumping forward quite a bit here because they did get divorced, unfortunately, in 1972. Meadows would be the one to maintain the custody of the children, which, jumping forward, might have been for their better health and safety, knowing where this goes.
Right.
Just the radiation is about to enter the home. I'm just going to say that. So after the divorce, Silkwood then relocated to Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, where she briefly worked as a clerk in a hospital, and this is where our story will take place. So now on August 5th of 1972, Silkwood was hired as a metallography laboratory technician at the Kerr-McGee Corporation. So there's the corporation you're looking for. It's Kerr-McGee. They no longer exist. They have been defunct, I believe, as of 2006. But here we are. This is the company we're talking about. And metallography, just for what it's worth, is the study of the structure and components of various metals. And Kerr-McGee, the corporation, was an American energy corporation, headquarters right there in Oklahoma City. They were once widely considered to be the leader of offshore drilling, and Kerr-McGee was involved in several different avenues of energy, including inorganic chemical, petroleum, and natural gas exploration. So your kind of early inclinations for the size of this company, I think, were well-founded because to do something so drastic, potentially, you might have a big reputation to kind of protect. So during her time there, she worked at their Cimarron River plutonium production plant. This was about 48 miles north, and this is where she relocated to the town of Crescent, Oklahoma. In the metallography lab, she performed quality checks on plutonium pellets that were used in nuclear fuel rods. In short, I mean, I'm greatly simplifying the process, but she would pull at random plutonium pellets, hold them up to unexposed X-ray film, and then the film would basically help visualize the radiation, the alpha decay coming off of these pellets, and it would show any hot spots on the pellet. And these hot spots would indicate where plutonium was more concentrated, therefore indicating a manufacturing defect. Kind of want a homogeneous density of plutonium in these pellets, I assume.
Oh, that is so interesting and sounds very dangerous.
Oh yeah, you're like, let me just hold up these pellets right to this film, etc. So during her early days of work, Silkwood joined the Oil, Chemical, and Atomic Workers Union, the OCAW. We'll talk a lot about them. And she joined so she could support the union's strike against the company. Just a few months later, in November of 1972, the union was seeking things like better wages, working conditions, and training on health and safety matters. This strike went on for 10 full weeks before it was then undermined by the company's initiative to then hire new employees. They're saying, fine, if you won't do this, we'll get new employees in the surrounding towns that are willing to cross these picket lines and kind of replace you all. And this didn't stop Silkwood. She continued to work with the OCAW, and nearly 2 years later, in August of 1974, she was then elected to the union's bargaining committee. This would make her one of 3 people on the committee and the first woman from Kerr-McGee to hold the title. Her first assignment was to investigate the health and safety issues of the plant because they started to spike. So giving you some background on this, they were falling behind on production. Kerr-McGee then said, we're doing 12-hour shifts and 7-day work weeks. We got to get back on schedule.
Right.
And that started in the spring of 1974. So that gives you some background. And because of that, people are getting tired. People are getting sloppy. They're trying to rush through things. But 7-day work weeks of 12 hours, that's half your life just working hard. And because of this, the number of contaminations, the number of spills started to increase pretty dramatically.
Oh my God. Yeah, you can only push production so fast, so hard, you know, depending on what it is that your product is. And this is not a product that you can push as fast as possible. You know what I mean?
No, oh no. And we'll also find that, yes, there are obvious and apparent risks with radiation, but a lot of that is, as we sit here today in 2025 with hindsight. We go back to 1974, and I'll talk about it. There are increased risks that this team isn't fully aware of. So they know of some of them, but there are greater risks that they yet don't understand. So in doing this investigation, Silkwood found numerous health violations at the plant, including evidence of improperly stored samples, missing plutonium, just straight up missing.
Okay. Kind of a big, huge deal.
Right. You know, you don't just walk home and go, oh, I just got a couple of pocketfuls of plutonium and didn't think about just where I was taking it.
That's like worldwide big deal.
I mean, if we're talking about a few missing grams on a spreadsheet of just pallets full, I don't know how you measure plutonium, but pallets full, then, you know, accidents are rounding errors. But, you know, we'll talk more about this in the theories, but that's one of the things. She also found faulty equipment, various spills and leaks, and areas where workers were exposed to contamination.
Oh my God. So shut it down. Shut it down.
Seal it all up, the cracks and crevices. You know, they know about the risks. I'm just saying, not all of them. Then on September 26, 1974, Silkwood and her fellow committee members took their findings all the way to Washington, D.C. There, they met with the OCAW Legislative Director Tony Manzoki, along with his assistant, Steve Vatka. So they were looking over all this evidence, and Manzoki and Vatka found that these violations were obviously highly concerning, but upon further discussion with the team, Manzoki believed that the committee members hadn't fully grasped the long-term dangers and ramifications of working with plutonium. And so whether it was negligence on the company's side or ignorance of the risks in general, they just weren't informed as employees. And he once commented that Karen seemed shocked once he informed her of the link between plutonium exposure and cancer. To be more specific, because plutonium is absorbed various different ways in the body, and where it collects impacts you differently, but it's specifically linked with lung, liver, and bone cancer due to those reasons.
Oof, man, you would just not ever want to have to deal with that. Thinking about it right now, if I did, there better be a damn payout that I can give to my family. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, huge payout. They are good for the rest of their life type of payout. Like, man, that's unfortunate. And to think that, like, you're just going there, you're working hard, trying to make a living, and, you know, it's the company should keep you safe.
You would really hope so.
Yeah, you know, I get it. Companies, they want to pay you less, or they want to try and skim you on the benefits or whatnot. But, like, your health, your well-being, that should be baseline priority.
And again, I don't want to sit here and I can't decipher if it's just undertraining or just broader ignorance of the long-term ramifications, but clearly Manzoki is aware of them. And so it's not like it's not available. It's not fringe knowledge yet. And it's always heartbreaking to look back on even recent decades. You talk about asbestos, right? Or any of these things that were commonly used in houses, lead paint, whatever. And you think like, oh my gosh, or unleaded gas versus leaded gas. And you just think our grandparents and parents and great-grandparents, what have you, are just exposed to all this stuff. And then in hindsight, they're going, oh, you know, whether it was corporate greed or negligence or ignorance, it's just, you now have all these health risks that are now just laid out behind you. You can do nothing about it. And you think about payouts, and it does help with damages or any sort of medical expenses, but truly no amount of money ever bought a second of time.
No, exactly. If you hand it to both people, majority of people, right? Everyone's got unique situations. They'd be like,
sure.
I would take my health and not having to deal with all this, regardless of possibly hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars being offered here as compensation.
You know, specific cases aside, I hear exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
So after this discussion, Manzoki and Silkwood then organized for 2 atomic scientists to, I mean, we're talking buff minds here, real strong, to then visit with the workers from the plant. Oh, I love this part. To educate them on the dangers of plutonium. This would then probably inspire them to, you know, make sure that they're following proper protocol, because I'm sure the company does have some, you know, these OSHA violations and things. But so if they're aware of these dangers, they're more inclined to follow proper protocol and maybe discourage any sort of spilling or what have you. Again, we're talking in a bustling environment, long days, long weeks, but a lot of nuance here that I'm kind of packaging up.
I just can't even like imagine just, again, like spills everywhere and someone just trying to wipe it up with a little tower or something like that, and all of a sudden like you're just hanging out, stepping on that stuff, tracking it everywhere, tracking it home.
Yes.
It's just gross, man. It's just, I don't like it. I don't like it. Like I remember not too long ago going out to a club and like the bathrooms were just rancid, and I just sat there like, I want to torch my shoe because I just don't ever want to wear this anywhere ever again.
Yeah, dude. I recently saw or read an article that had a picture of Bourbon Street in New Orleans. Been there, was a wonderful time, but I was made aware of a situation I'd never known of. I forget what they called it, but I want to call it like street soup or whatever they called it. And they're showing people in flip-flops walking through it, and you just think it's rain and drainage water, and it's like, no. And that stuff gets around.
Oh, that's disgusting. It gets tracked everywhere, and then
yeah.
I hate it, dude.
Then you pack your bags and
then you're rolling around your suitcase, and you bring your suitcase into your bedroom, and that's rolling around it. That's so gross.
Then you stop at the burger joint. Anyway, this is less of a disgust thing and more of a radiation thing, but I'll paint a very vivid picture for you because your inclination's not wrong. But anyway, Manzoki basically encouraged them and the committee to continue gathering documentation on their findings. Keep looking into this, keep letting us know what's going on, and hopefully by educating, these things can improve. So at this point, the OCAW turned to the press and the Atomic Energy Commission, the AEC, and they launched a whistleblowing campaign into Kerr-McGee. With that now said, let's talk about the contamination and get very specific about some of these numbers. On November 5th, 1974, Silkwood's routine contamination check came back with very shocking findings. And in looking closer about these routine contamination checks, it seemed that they happened at least on the daily, maybe as they were leaving work, but sometimes multiple times a day. So her test in particular was taken at 6:30 p.m. that night. And she reported that she had 20,000 disintegrations per minute. Disintegrations per minute is a number of radioactive nuclei that decay per minute. It's kind of like how many particles are coming off of an object. In simple terms, it's the measurement of radioactivity of an object. So she has 20,000 disintegrations per minute of plutonium on her clothes. Her right nostril is showing 150 D/M, and her left showed 9. So we're seeing a huge disparity.
Right.
Now, at the time, the AEC deemed that 500 disintegrations per minute was safe. So her clothes are 40 times the safe limit. Mind-blowing numbers. And it only has just begun.
And like how long does that linger for?
That part I do not know. I know a little bit about half-lives, about when an object is or an element is decaying and becomes a different piece of matter, how its radioactivity can change. But I don't know if those particles stay in there. I don't know if something as simple as laundry will clean it all out. I don't know if you have to wait for it to decay over time, but it can certainly spread like physical objects, right? From one thing to another by touch.
Yeah, you're probably throwing it on your bed or hanging it up in your car, throwing your dirty laundry, which you're washing, but you're not washing the hamper,
You're thinking about all of it top to bottom.
I'm a neat freak. I don't like this at all.
Yeah.
Even if it's not, germs and stuff. Like, it's just like, this is not good for anybody.
So how does this happen? Well, she had been working in what's called a glove box. I'm sure you've seen one of this type before. It's one of those sealed boxes with a window, and it has the gloves attached to the outer wall. Now, this is meant to prevent radiation exposure while you're working with, obviously, highly radioactive material. In this case, she was polishing plutonium pellets. And we do actually have an image for you, Fredo. It's the second image where you see a man working in a very similar type of glove box, if you want to check that out.
Second image? Oh, yeah. It's just a box, got the gloves in, like you would see in any type of, I would say, film that has someone tampering with some type of biological weapon, like the movies.
Yeah, like that Ryan Reynolds movie. What is it called? Life?
Oh, where, there's like an organism.
Yeah, crawled down his mouth gullet and ate him from inside.
Oof, that would have been a great intro to a Venom movie.
So, of course, now it's 6:30 p.m. Contamination is found at quite high levels. The gloves that she was using on the glove box were immediately replaced. The old ones were looked at. They didn't find any leaks, no apparent leaks anyway. And then Silkwood was given instructions to take samples of her urine and feces. We have contamination on the outside. Let's test the inside. And she remained at the lab that night until 1:10 a.m. She tested herself once again upon leaving. This time, gratefully, her test came back clean. So she then went home, did her thing, and returned back the next morning. That day, she spent an hour on paperwork and other tasks before running another test on herself. Once again, after doing paperwork that morning, plutonium was found. This time it was on her right forearm, her neck, and on her face. She was decontaminated and requested that her car and her locker be tested as well. However, those tests came back clean.
Okay.
So what's your head thinking about right now?
Well, it doesn't spread as easy as I thought it would. Which I think that's a double-edged sword, because I think it really can, but it's not like this thing where someone who's very much a neat freak, germaphobe a bit, isn't like she just sits into this car and all of a sudden all the inside's exposed and everything's exposing
boom.
each other and this
pop
essentially. So that's good, but also just like how much, sure, you get exposed a little bit on your body, your skin, and then you decontaminate fairly quickly. But over time, how much does that really, you know what I mean? I'm assuming that affects you over time.
Yes, I would imagine so. Consistent high levels of radiation are definitely going to take a toll. Now, this is where I don't want to get too conspiracy too quickly. I don't want to just throw things out there. I just don't like doing that. But I do believe that part of the picture here is, are these tests accurate? Are the test results being obscured in some way? Because the company itself is testing the locker and the car and things. Mm-hmm. But we'll kind of pin that just as a thought as we continue on, because we will continue to explore a lot of things. So with your questioning of spreading, I want you to also pin that, because it does spread, and we'll talk about it. So on November 7th, she returned to the lab, this time with 1 fecal sample and 4 urine samples. A nasal swab was performed once again, and this time found significant levels of what's called alpha decay, indicating a high rate of alpha particle emissions from plutonium decay. So plutonium can decay via beta particles or alpha particles. In this case, we're talking a lot more about alpha. Now, the nasal swab, remember 500 is safe. The nasal swab showed 45,000 disintegrations per minute in each nostril, as well as 40,000 around her nose, which is all about 90 times the safe limit. Additionally, tests on her fecal matter showed 30 to 40,000 D/M. Oof. These tests continue to show various amounts found on other body parts, such as her hands, her arms, neck, and chest. Her locker and car, however, continue to show no signs of alpha activity, but health physicists from Kerr-McGee came to the apartment that she shared with fellow laboratory analyst Sherry Ellis, and they were going to test for levels throughout their home. So the locker's safe and the car is safe. Let's hear about the home. Now, interestingly, her urine samples collected at home had shown high amounts of alpha activity, whereas her samples collected at work showed hardly any. So there is a disparity in the results here. When she's home and she does the samples herself, brings them in and tests them, boom, high levels.
Right.
When she does them at work, I don't know if there's a third party between her and the test, but it stands out. Like, why are her urine samples at work not showing any radioactivity? Mm-hmm. So again, we're talking about the apartment. Varying levels of activity are in fact found throughout the apartment. Now, significant levels were found in the bathroom and the kitchen. This is where it gets absolutely buck. I had to fact check this 1,000 times because there was a package of bologna and cheese in her fridge. It was tested, and it showed 400,000 disintegrations per minute, 800 times the now, safe limit.
How's that happen?
Oh, man.
How's it just getting to the what?
That's a great question.
So what she was get into?
Bologna and cheese.
See, here's the thing, though. Bologna, what are you doing?
Yeah, what are you doing with bologna anyway? I feel like that 20,000 might be the baseline. You know what I'm saying? Like, we don't know what's in that.
Yeah, come on, man. Bologna?
Bologna?
Like turkey?
I haven't had bologna since I was maybe like 12.
That's what I'm saying. I'm judging a little bit, but
I don't know why, but I feel like the 90s was like we like our bologna, and then it was turkey ever since then.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it's such a turkey. Bologna, that tastes funky as hell.
There's a lot of pink goo in that. Anyway.
Yeah, there is.
And they got the olive loaves. I don't know what they're doing with bologna. Anyway, so your question is a great question because she was asked the same. When she was asked how such high levels of plutonium ended up in her bathroom and kitchen, Silkwood actually recounted her day. So she was taking urine samples, and it so ended up that she accidentally spilled one earlier that day. So she takes a towel, she wipes it up, And then she goes about her day. She goes into the kitchen. She grabs bologna from the fridge. I don't know why she does this, but she takes it to the bathroom with her because she's intending to kind of eat a sandwich of bologna and cheese. But the package itself comes with her to the bathroom, maybe because she grabs it, and while she's running around, she's cleaning up. I'm not exactly sure. Okay.
Who's eating bologna, and why are you taking it into the bathroom? That's just... And also, like, it seems like you're making the sandwich in the bathroom. Like, it doesn't matter if you're running around and you're not... It's just, I don't know. You just kind of don't do that.
Listen, you take a urine sample 4 times in a day and you spill one, there's going to be some panic, okay? Who knows what can happen in the panic? But I do want to say...
Wild.
Someone needs to get this woman a countertop because she sets the bologna on the closed toilet seat before then she goes, oh, I've got leftovers. I'm going to eat my leftovers. Grabs that meat, chucks it back in the fridge, and then she goes off and has her leftovers. So that is the story of the bologna, how it ended up in the fridge, and the environment it went through to collect 400,000 disintegrations per minute. So either way, bologna became the star of the show. The point is, there's a heavy amount of alpha activity in this house, and we figured out it was her. It's Silkwood. And obviously the urine samples.
Oh, there's so much to unpack here.
Yeah, well, for a germaphobe, I definitely kind of blindsided you with the urine spill, so. This episode of Red Web is sponsored by HelloFresh. You know, when I think about spring, I think about fresh air, sunshine, and great food. That's what it's all about. HelloFresh makes it easier to fit those quick home-cooked meals into your schedule every week by curating delicious recipes like pasta primavera, chicken Dijon, and pecan-crusted trout, as well as over 100 seasonal snacks, sides, and treats. In 2025, HelloFresh is evolving to fit every lifestyle by bringing customers even more convenience without compromising on taste, health, or that homemade quality. Their new ready-made meals offer chef-crafted, flavorful dishes that are ready in just 3 minutes. HelloFresh also has flexible deliveries that you can pause or skip when you need. For a long time now, I really appreciate HelloFresh. Not only have they opened me up to new recipes that I get to learn and cook with my wife, but I also love the convenience of popping something in if I have a busy day. I know I can have a healthy meal packed with protein and get my veggies in on the go. It is a wonderful thing to lean on in a busy life. And it's always tasty. Feel great with meals that fit your spring schedule and make the season even more delicious. Go to HelloFresh.com/RedWeb10FM now to get 10 free meals with a free item for life. 1 box per active subscription, free meals applied as discount on first box. New subscribers only, varies by plan. Again, HelloFresh.com/RedWeb10FM. So let's jump forward now.
Okay.
We have and I also want to say that throughout the apartment, we have 20,000, 25,000, just like all over the place. Top of the cabinets, side of the stove. I mean, so we're seeing a lot of test results from throughout this apartment. Now jumping forward on the following Monday, November 11th, Silkwood, her boyfriend Drew Stevens, and her roommate Sherry Ellis all met with Dr. George Voelz of Los Alamos National Laboratory, and they went in for further testing. So, remember, Ellis worked with her at the factory here. So Ellis and Stevens were found to have, low levels of activity, but nothing that would cause concern. So it's there. They're in that environment. No concern. Silkwood, though, this is where things start to get even weirder. She was found with 0.34 nanocuries of americium-241 in her lungs. So nanocurie is a unit of radioactivity, I imagine named after the brilliant Marie Curie, who kind of was a French physicist and studied a lot about radiation. She died of cancer because of she just didn't know what radioactivity was, and it's because of her sacrifice that we know so much about its damages and things. I could do a whole podcast on the woman, so I'm truncating here, but they found americium-241 in her lungs. And americium-241 is a gamma-emitting decay product of plutonium-241. So essentially, when plutonium enters beta decay, it appears as americium. One of the neutrons turns into a proton, a beta particle spits out, there's your radioactivity.
Got it.
Now, based on the amount of americium, Dr. Voelz believed that she had 6 or 7 nanocuries of plutonium-239 in her lungs. 239 versus 241. 239 is the type of plutonium that emits alpha particles, more likely. And so that's what she's measuring. That's what we're talking about this whole episode. But it is interesting that americium is also in the picture. So all that is to say is that there is a deeper, more understood analysis of the radioactive kind of poisoning happening on her body. Now on November 13th, Ellis and Silkwood both returned to the lab, but were prohibited from radiation work. And this is all of the history, all of the context that we have now on Silkwood that leads into the accident. So after her shift on that day, November 13th, Silkwood attended an OCAW meeting at 5:30 p.m. at the Hub Cafe. So after the meeting, she had plans then to meet with Steve Fotka, who I mentioned before, as well as a New York Times reporter, David Burnham. This is down in Oklahoma City. So quite a bit of a drive, but not too bad. Now, it was reported, in addition to that, that she carried with her proof of her claim that the, quote, quality control of the fuel rods had been compromised, end quote. Now, this is according to Manzoki. Again, these are all reports. It's hard to substantiate, and we'll never know the real truth. But it was also reported by those that saw her that Silkwood had shared her plans with another union member, kind of at that meeting perhaps, and that with her she had a notebook and a manila folder. This would contain the documents, the claims, and the proof. She then left the OCAW meeting at 7:10 p.m. and began her 30-mile drive to the interview. However, as you know, she would never arrive. Around 7:40 p.m., the wreckage of her car was discovered along Highway 74, just 7.3 miles south of the cafe. The front end of her car had been completely smashed in. It was a very violent wreck. There are photos of this wreck online. Viewer discretion, of course, if you want to go see what that wreckage looked like. But according to reports, her car ran along the left side of the highway into the grassy shoulder and then down along the side, and then collided with the sidewall of a concrete culvert, which we do have an image for you. This is the scene without the car, without the crime scene. This is just what it looked like back in the day.
Got it. Yeah, it's a road with a little tiny, like, what is that? Underpass?
Yeah, like that's where a creek or some drainage would kind of be able to flow under the highway. So you can see if she drifted off to the left, or we'll talk about the theories. If she went off to the left, she would have gone down the grassy embankment, and then the front end of the car kind of going over that hole would have smashed into the side of that drainage ditch.
Yeah. It's not like a terrible height though, you know?
No.
Granted, speed plays a big, huge part in this, but nothing where I went, doesn't matter if you go off of that, it's over, you know? Most likely you come out pretty scratched up, but you're just fine.
Yeah. And looking at the car, it seems that most of the damage was not so much falling over that, but instead it was the fall where the car kind of tilted, and then with her forward momentum hit that sidewall hard enough to completely collapse the front of the car, which created the lethal crash.
Right.
So moving into the investigation, her death was ruled a single car accident caused by Silkwood falling asleep at the wheel. So let's talk about that. This conclusion comes from the coroner's discovery of 0.35 milligrams of the sedative methaqualone, known as Quaaludes, in her blood. So that stood out to me. I wanted to do some more poking and prodding because 0.35 milligrams is not the amount of Quaaludes she took. It's just the amount that they found. I don't know how much blood, if that's like 0.35 milligrams per liter, which is still very, very low. But regardless, it's present. And so that's where the coroner's coming from. Now, it's unclear if she had a history of excessive drug use or alcohol use, but Silkwood was in fact prescribed Quaaludes, above board, all prescription, for sleep. And while she was instructed to take them at night, her friends had noted that she began taking them during the day, hence the presence in her blood. Now, I do want to say there were 8 other toxicologists who were interviewed by ABC's Reasoner Report, and they disagreed that the 0.35 milligrams of Quaalude would be enough to cause her to fall asleep at the wheel while driving the car. However, the medical examiner, the coroner of the case, right, A.J. Chapman, determined that it was enough for her to fall asleep. And so that's where the official explanation rests.
Oh. Yeah, see, she was taking Quaaludes, huh?
Mm-hmm.
It's a pretty hefty drug.
It's a very hefty drug. I don't know the amount she took. We don't know when that day she took them. All we know is that there's definitely the presence in her blood, and she did have a prescription.
When she had a prescription, she was known to take it. I mean, the government could use that as a play there. But then again, it's like, what did they like put it up with a Quaalude and then put a brick on their gas pedal and just let it go? Like,
oh, I see what you're saying. I almost think that it's like if the government is in play, that it's like, well, you know, we have, again, 8 toxicologists saying that's not enough for her to fall asleep at the head of the wheel, right, while driving.
Oh, the government's play is like, oh, we kind of got like...
Lean on it.
Yeah,
lean on it. Make it seem like it might be actually. So that's, again, that we're getting into conspiracy, but the medical examiner, like I said, determined that this was in fact enough. So you have 1 out of 9. It's not that 4 out of 5 dentists recommend kind of situation,
right.
But, and I'm not a medical professional. I'm not going to pretend to wade into this topic with my own opinion, but I did feel like it was quite low in my cursory research. But that's where I stumbled into the ABC Reasoners Report interview, and so I'll let the toxicologists speak for themselves. But this is where a lot of the conspiracies are fueled from: the lack of clear answers, the lack of trusting answers, or the I don't know about that, what about this kind of thing. You know, we see it all.
Right. Yeah.
So after the crash, the OCAW hired crash investigator A.O. Pipkin Jr., which is like a hard name. That's a really cool name.
Yeah.
And they looked into the case further. So Pipkin concluded that Silkwood was awake at the time of her crash, citing the steering wheel. Now, this is a little hairy, so feel free to ask any questions if you need it, but they said that the steering wheel was bent on the sides, indicating that that was her trying to hold the steering wheel and remain in control of the vehicle. And so when the crash happened, it would have like kind of maybe traveled through her arms or her body. It's not saying she was like the Hulk and squeezed the wheel in, but that the energy was able to transfer into the wheel that way. I do want to say, when I see the wreckage, it is violent enough that I could see the wheel getting banged up regardless.
Right.
But he is a crash investigator. Like, this is their bread and butter. So
yeah, that's their profession.
Additionally, and this might be even like stronger, because I never even thought about this, he cited that in most crashes resulting from impaired driving or someone falling asleep, the cars tend to veer to the right and not the left. So I was really curious about that. So I read further, and it's because of the contour of the road. If you know, roads aren't perfectly flat. They kind of hump in the middle. That's called the crown. And a lot of that has to do with drainage. When it rains, water can run off to the sides and not sit in puddles, create hydroplaning, all of that stuff. And so they tend to be higher in the middle. And so if you were to fall asleep or completely let go of the wheel outside of your tires being completely misaligned,
right,
gravity should take over. That subtle slope should guide you, just like rainwater, to the side of the road. And since we drive on the right side, the rest of the world, you would go off to the right. It's not a guarantee, right? It is a higher likelihood. It's a supporting claim.
Right.
I think I looked it up and I found anywhere from 60 to 75% go off the right, but it's not 100%.
Got it. 60 to 75%.
It's a very broad percentage after like light looks, right? So it's...
Oh, for sure. I'm just saying that percentage is like, I mean, a third of the time it's going the other way, you know? Which is a hefty percentage, you know? That's the kind of percentage like you could put a lot of worry into if there's anything else.
So Pipkin's kind of putting together a few elements that say, well, this nudges it that way and this nudges it that way. And so when all these things nudge it to a different conclusion, i.e. she's not asleep at the wheel, I am saying, Pipkin Jr. here, I am inclined to believe that that's not the case. And that's where he's coming from.
Got it.
Now, there was one other thing that helped him nudge his conclusion in this direction. So he explained that the tire tracks left on the grassy shoulder did not indicate some sort of slow drift that he's used to seeing. Instead, it looked like someone who had tried to regain control of the car. According to Pipkin, if the vehicle had drifted, it would continue to drift east. And in fact, they concluded that she would have missed the culvert completely and just kept driving off at a sharper and sharper left turn if she were to be driving like that. The fact that she actually tried to fight the car back onto the road is what kind of kept her skidding on the grass and staying almost parallel now, slightly downhill from the road, parallel to the road. And that's where the culvert shows up, where it's a sudden drop off. The car falls down and collides with the opposite kind of sidewall to paint the picture.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that'll do it.
Now, I am bearing the lead.
Okay.
Because I really wanted to get your thoughts as we went through here, because I think that much like many of the theories, this might paint a very strong opinion. So the last piece and the most dramatic indication that Silkwood was not asleep at the wheel, according to Pipkin Jr., was that he found a dent on the rear bumper.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Now, according to Silkwood's friends, that dent was not present before this crash.
Ran off the road type situation. Oh, man. Oh, man. Okay.
I don't know. It could be run off the road, which indicates intent. Could have been a little fender bender mixed with a loss of control, mixed with an accident, and someone fleeing the scene. We'll talk about all these in the theories. But despite Pipkin's findings, the medical coroner maintained the ruling that her death was an accident, a single car incident, and that she fell asleep at the wheel. And that's where the theories come in. Any thoughts as we dive into these theories? I think you named one right out the gate.
Yeah, I mean, like, why would the government step in on this type of thing? You know what I mean? Less like, oh my God, you've uncovered this deep, huge conspiracy.
Right.
It was less like that now. More so just like, hey, this plant does not got their stuff together.
Okay. So you're saying it's more in the realm of the corporation, and maybe those early thoughts of government conspiracy are less well-founded.
Right. So that's kind of faded a bit. But then like a corporation trying to run her off the road. I mean, honestly, I'm starting to lean more towards now just like, oh no, see, because in most doctors or, say that like there wasn't enough. I don't know where I'm at right now.
Yeah.
Like
dude.
Like there's not enough to grapple onto like any theory for me. And I can't quite think like it is like as of right now, it doesn't seem like there's an ex-boyfriend or like the ex-husband, like
right
coming into play here or something like that for some odd reason.
Yeah,
man. It's kind of like, is it just a straight up accident that happened?
Let's talk about it.
Okay.
All right. So we're going to start off with the one that you mentioned just recently here, the idea of being run off the road. So given Pipkin's findings, many people at the time theorized that Silkwood was deliberately run off the road with the intent to kill her and silence her once and for all. However, Manzoki and Vodka believed that the intent was not to kill Silkwood, but rather intimidate, maybe scare her from going from the interview and whistleblowing any further. The investigation was happening. We don't know for sure if the manila folder was in play or not. This is kind of hearsay. There's no hard evidence. But yeah, so their perspective considered the long, flat stretch of road. They believed that perhaps the assailant assumed that it was a safe spot to push a car around and only run them off the road, not so much expecting a drainage ditch to pop up and then have a violent crash that became lethal. So,
right. Kind of like we'll just send her a message. Oh no, that message was too serious and now it's the last message they've ever received.
Right. So was it run off the road on purpose? Was it run off the road on accident? That's where we'll never know. But what's interesting, and again, it's so frustrating because I'm like, if you got proof, you got evidence, just come forward with it.
Right,
Don't just be telling stories. But let's talk about this, okay? In 1992, an anonymous attorney reported that a former Oklahoma City police officer confessed to them some interesting information. He said that this police officer, along with 3 other off-duty officers, were tailing Silkwood that night. Those officers, yes, they were off-duty, but they had also been working specifically at Kerr McGee while they were off-duty. And so they have a strong relationship to the company. And per this report, the 4 had been drinking and while following her, bumped her and ran her off the road. The attorney shared this information, supposedly, with the former Oklahoma Highway Patrol Lieutenant Larry Dellinger, and Dellinger then took this information to the FBI and the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation. However, frustratingly, this is why I kind of say supposedly, nothing ever came of it. And so I'm like, it either is or it isn't.
Yeah.
Or is there a deeper cover up here because they're like, well, we can't say that our own officers of the law, because then we'll have, and then you start to get into a whole other mess. But so there's a conspiracy within it.
But still, like, they were tailing and then they were drunk and then they ran her off the road on accident. Like, not to say that's not possible. Or, yeah, it definitely could have happened. But, oh man, that just seems like so many layers that had to play out.
Yeah. First, you have a confession that came many years later. Anonymous to another anonymous, And then they report it, and then that report then goes to the FBI and things, and then nothing ever comes of it. So it's like, at what level of anonymous reporting does your trust start to get a little weaker? I assume that the report maybe says the actual 4 officers, maybe has their like connection to Kerr McGee, but we'll never know, you know? We may never find out.
Yeah, no, we won't.
So that brings us into a very similar theory as this one. It's also been hypothesized that Silkwood was driving erratically because maybe she wasn't run off the road, but instead she was chased. Maybe similar motive, maybe a ne'er-do-well, who's to say? But according to reports, members of the union had stated that Silkwood had become slightly paranoid, believing that Kerr McGee was coming after her. The reason for the chase was similar to the run off the road theory, and it was to intimidate her, maybe stop her from going all the way to Oklahoma City. Let's just like stop this here and now so nothing worse happens to you and nothing worse happens to the mysterious us, right? That's kind of the idea. Let's stop the whistleblow, not intending to kill anybody. It's just an intimidation gone wrong, essentially.
Got it.
If Silkwood was being chased, it's possible that it caused her to lose control of the car and drive into the shoulder where it is kind of a grassy slope where you might lose traction. Heck, I mean, it's not a car, it's a semi-truck, but I've seen a semi end up in those grassy ditches, and I see like they turned real hard to the right because the inclination is to want to get back on the road.
Yeah.
And from there, the semi actually tipped completely onto its side because it turned the cab sideways. But for a car, it could cause you to lose full traction and suddenly you're drifting on the grass, so you have no control whatsoever.
Right.
But what was interesting about this theory is when I was reading, I saw that it was reported that she was estimated as going 45 miles an hour. And my own inclination is, and I went right down into Google Street View because I clicked right along this highway where this happened till I found the speed limit, which admittedly can change over the years, but everything I've seen in doing that and researching it says that the posted speed limit is 55 miles an hour. And so if there's a chase happening, I'm inclined to think that maybe she's going faster.
Right, yeah.
Maybe she slowed down or lost some speed in the grass. You know, it's all up in the air. But the crash didn't happen at the speed limit or higher. So it's something I wanted to at least highlight for the sake of thought.
Yeah, because you're going to be going above speed limit. That's just, everyone goes above it. And then you're being chased, so you're trying to drive a little fast. Yeah, I could see that, so.
And it's tough to say too, because my own inclination is yes, if you trust that the documents are there, it's important that the documents are no longer there. They're not in the crash. I don't know if I said that, but I should have. So she is found deceased in this car wreck, documents missing. But again, that's trusting that the documents were there. So I have to say that, what if they weren't there and the crash still happened? There is room, even if there were documents, for an accident to happen of any kind. Falling asleep, accidental kind of rear-ending, losing control. Maybe if she's paranoid, she thinks someone's chasing her, but they're not, and while looking backwards, she veers to the left. This can go 1,000 micro different ways.
Yes, it can, yeah.
But these are the prominent conspiracies from the time. But there's another one. And about a year and a half after the accident, a Nashville journalist by the name of Jack Shruji came forward with a theory about the accident. So Shruji believed that the missing documents held the answers to the case. So she hypothesized that Silkwood, perhaps unknowingly, carried documents that had information that exposed a nuclear smuggling ring at the plant, as well as who might be involved. You know, we're talking a lot about contamination and leaks and things just not being done properly, up to code, what have you, all of these violations, and how that's kind of poisoning a lot of people. But maybe in doing that, remember, she found missing plutonium. It's possible that this theory is correct. What if she was actually stumbling into something much bigger?
Okay, yeah, see, that I didn't think about. Stumbling into something much bigger. Oh, man, see, now I'm leaning back into the whole conspiracy stuff again. You know what I mean? The government's at play again. Here we go.
Now, this is only going to make things more conspiratorial.
Okay.
Right? So her roommate Ellis also worked at the factory. I'm not exactly sure on her specific job. We know that Silkwood was definitely directly involved with and handling plutonium. So it does make sense that she has radioactivity on her, that there's some level of poisoning here. However, Shruji suggested that Silkwood was intentionally poisoned to steer her away from the files. and that when she returned, the alleged smugglers decided to run her off the road. Now, this is where I want to be pretty honest. I don't want to read between the lines in my own understanding. Poisoning could come in various forms, but it does seem that Shruji is indicating the company is poisoning her with this radioactivity because, yes, it's in the house, but the fact that it's not in the locker or her car, the fact that it's not showing up in the urine at the company, but it is in her urine at home, the fact that it's not showing up with her boyfriend as much or with her roommate as much, who also works at the factory where spills and leaks are happening, is... like, again, this is where Shruji might be coming from, is that maybe it's the perfect crime, so to speak. Let's kind of poison her with plutonium alpha particles in some way. And so that way it's, well, maybe it's just part of the job and we didn't know. And so that's how this happened. But instead it's the company doing it. I don't know. Like, it starts to get a little weird, a little wild.
I mean, it's conspiracies. You start going down multiple rabbit holes.
But I can see the dots she's dang connecting, and I'm kind of like, dang it,
Yeah, here we go again. I was like, well, I don't, and I'm back in. I'm back in.
You're like, I think it's completely understandable. Explain. Oh, hold on. What is that? What are we doing there?
Yeah, like minutes ago, I was like, okay, maybe it's just a typical car crash.
That's how it goes. He goes, all right, okay, cool. I've heard it all. It sounds like it's this. Then I hit you with a curveball conspiracy and you go, well, come on. And I just reopen all the doors.
Now we're back in it. At it, man. Yeah, I'm back in the could have been. I mean, to think about it, it's like, sure, the plant didn't do their job very well. People weren't protected. But also, it's her job to kind of spot that. So you think that she would be a veteran in terms of like managing her way around exposure. But if she's being purposefully exposed, whole different situation.
Right. And does that answer for why the urine samples are clean when the company's handling them? Does that answer for why her roommate and coworker and boyfriend are a little bit like much more clean, still positive, but much more clean than she is as far as radiation? Like, again, it's connecting some dots that are out there dangling.
Yeah, dots are definitely being connected.
To kind of conclude on this, Silkwood did find, as I said, plutonium was missing during her initial investigations with the committee. It's unclear how that came to be, or if anyone was ever accused of smuggling the material, or purposefully mishandling or misappropriating, or just disappearing this material. So, rounding error and missing files versus files that were stolen and kilograms worth of material being like, it's the details that can completely shift where one concludes this whole case to be. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And like, again, there's arguments for every little detail, right? In the beginning, we're talking about the documents in the car were stolen, but then it's like, well, yeah, we don't really have, as you go into it, you kind of figure out like, did we even have any inclination that the documents were there to begin with? I guess there wasn't like an investigation to see if the documents were at the house. Yeah,
no, they were just completely disappeared.
Yeah.
Copies, man. That's where I go. In hindsight, I'm like, I wish there were copies on copies, You got a locker with a dead man switch kind of situation where
100%.
If I don't call the number every 72 hours, they'll be released to the public, But who expects, though, when they're doing the good deed to be run off a road? No one expects when they do the right thing to be whistleblowing on something that shouldn't be happening to end up gone.
Yeah, it's not something like you think about until it's probably too late,
Sure. Or you think like, oh, come on, that would never happen here because that's like movie material.
Yeah, it's like, it sounds so extreme. But again, you're right. Like you don't know until it's too late. I feel like more so you'd have to be able to avoid that one fatal moment and then go, oh no, I'm in this now.
Right.
And I don't think it's like good luck just stumbling across someone to plan that's planning this and be like, oh my goodness, I can't believe I found out. It's more so you found out because you're in the middle of it.
Yep, you're the person or one of three that's really kind of assigned to kind of look into that stuff.
Yeah.
After her death, an investigation was launched into the security of Kerr-McGee and the plant. And this is where we do have information on how much plutonium had been misplaced, Fredo. 20 to 30 kilograms. That's no rounding error. That ain't some dust off the top.
Whoa.
That's the amount of plutonium it is to make 3 to 4 nuclear bombs, bro.
Okay. Yeah. Someone didn't want her snitching. That's where I'm going. That's a lot of plutonium missing. That's a lot of money to people.
It's these details, man. You're pushing me down the conspiracy line, man. I'm trying to be like,
yeah, I'm back in it, dude.
I'm over here going, the world's boring. It's fine, but this is interesting. Yeah. But nope.
No, man, that's a lot. And you know how much that is? It's probably worth so much money. If you can make nuclear bombs, like multiple, ooh, that's not even that's a handful. That's a handful.
That's a handful. I want to know, this is me being real curious.
Okay.
And Christian, I don't know, our producer here, I don't know if this is something you can look up, to be fair, in a timely manner, but 3 to 4 nuclear bombs could be anything. What is the yield of these 3 to 4? Because you could have like a baby nuclear bomb that's enough to really destroy a town, or you could have one of them SAR bombas that's like, that's enough to just really wreck a biome, like a geographical center.
Right. Here's the thing. Whether you got one big one or a bunch of tiny ones or a couple of tiny ones, it's all bad.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
All
right, that's
bad.
fair. I'm just getting really curious now, but you're right.
I'm curious too. No, I mean, I didn't even put that into perspective. Like, you know.
Yeah.
But it's all bad, no matter what.
It's all bad.
Like, again, that's where government's getting to play. Like, that's a lot of money. People with a lot of money, people with a lot of power, politics come into play. Everything's messy at that point. Everything is just, you're opening a whole world to people who have access to money and influence, and then people go missing. Could you imagine if you're like the person at like the, I don't know, the Pentagon or whatever that makes the choices of like people that need to go missing?
Go miss. Oh man.
Because not necessarily like good people are going missing. It could be like this person's bad. They need to go missing.
Sure. You're talking about that like the blacklist.
Yeah.
The top sinners and ne'er-do-wells and
yeah. And then they're just like, yeah, we're responsible for like 80 people disappearing off the face of the planet.
Ugh. I mean, listen, these are sinister individuals, I have to believe, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
They're not just like, that guy looked at me weird, put him on the list.
No, it's definitely got to be like this person has done some possible country damaging plays recently or over years, and like,
man,
it's just not gonna get any better. We've been keeping tabs on them. They're making moves.
I can't even wrap my head around a decision like that.
That's what I'm saying.
There's a lot of people in this world though, at the fork in that road, making those hard decisions, protecting this and that, and bless them for doing the fighting the good fight, so to speak.
Right. In the shadows that we don't, and just imagine, right? Like the wars and the fights that are happening in the shadows that we don't know about.
Whew.
Must be vast.
That's the real freaky stuff.
Yeah.
You know, it's I'd rather dabble into the, what kind of aircraft hasn't been declassified yet? Is that the UFO?
Right.
And you're dabbling in the, what kind of like secret war is happening that we don't even know? And I go,
covert operations, and you're just like, oh no, man, that's woo.
I'm just trying to play Elder Scrolls Oblivion right now, you know? Like, okay, so to wrap up the conclusion here, the plant was in fact shut down not too long after. In fact, in 1975, it was shut down, as well as the remaining Kerr-McGee nuclear power plants. Was that to hide any sort of other smuggling? I don't know, but I'm asking a question.
Or did that facilitate more smuggling? You're on a business, everyone's trying to see what they could take a little something here or there out the door.
Yep.
Before you continue, the question about the yield in regards to how much plutonium was missing.
Yes.
It is a very tough question to answer. It depends on like what goes into each bomb and whatnot. And it depends on the type of plutonium, which I admittedly don't know what type we're talking about in this case.
Probably 241 or 239.
Yeah. So for reference, the Fat Man bomb that was used to bomb Nagasaki, that consisted of 6.2 kilograms of plutonium-239.
Okay. And since 239 is alpha particles and that's what most of the radiation is, I think that's what we're talking about. So 20 to 30 kilograms is at least 3 of those.
That's gnarly.
But we're talking 3 to 4. So yeah. Whoa. Wow. Brilliant research, Christian. That's incredible and
terrifying.
Morbid context.
But I guess like, I don't know. I don't think we can necessarily tie any like nuclear bombs to this missing plutonium. So
see, that's what I was really curious about. And, you know, I don't know all the greater details of the nuclear arms race. You know, I know Russia got nuclear arms in the late 40s, I believe, maybe turn of the 50s. And so I was really curious if there were any moments outside of the Cuban Missile Crisis, for example, that happened in this time frame, but nothing that stood out on a cursory glance. It was going to be a whole other branch of research there, but it's a very good question. A task force, historian lovers, buff minds out there, if you're connecting any dots that we're missing here, as you like to do in our Discord, you're discussing this, please shout it out. I would be very interested to see if you can connect some dots, because it's a great question. Did this missing 20 to 30 kilograms just disappear, or did it turn into something that might have happened in the world? Good question. So in the end, Silkwood's father and her children would later then sue Kerr-McGee for gross negligence. The trial occurred in the spring of 1979. However, after several appeals in 1986, Kerr-McGee agreed to settle out of court for $1.86 million. Silkwood's estate would argue that she had been contaminated with plutonium at the time of her death, sustained at the Kerr-McGee plant. However, the defense argued that the amount of plutonium in her body would not result in death. So it was kind of this back and forth of like, yes, she was poisoned, but it wasn't really enough to kill her kind of situation. Not a good sign if you're on the side of, yeah, we poisoned her, but not enough. The defense also labeled Silkwood as a, quote, troublemaker and suggested that she had intentionally poisoned herself. Wonderful. Yeah, no, we didn't do it. You did. And if we did, it wasn't enough. Weird position. So Silkwood's whistleblowing and advocacy had a lasting impact on the general public. She was recognized as, quote, America's first nuclear whistleblower by the National Whistleblower Center. After her death, her case became a national story and resulted in an FBI investigation into Kerr-McGee. So her death was not for naught. Yes, she might have had some files on her that could help blow something wide open. And unfortunately, she lost her life. But it wasn't that wasn't the end, right? And because of that, it raised awareness of a lot of things, and the FBI still investigated. And then in 1983, her story was brought to the screen in the film Silkwood, after her own name, which detailed her life and activism, and actually starred Meryl Streep in the title role.
Oh.
Also, this kind of just blew me away. It wasn't until the last sentence of the outline that we had the time to movie drop. Normally, that's right out the gate.
That's true, yeah.
We mentioned a movie right away.
Well, I was going to say Beautiful Mind, way back.
Sure, okay, sure, yeah.
Conspiracies, whatnot. That's a good one. That's a real good one.
Yeah, very good one. But yes, this has been the mysterious and unfortunate death of a brilliant woman named Karen Silkwood. And as we continue to go on, man, it's like part of me wants the world to just be boring and normal and accidents happen. But there's a few details. And when you look at some of those details, some need more answers, but some start to really go, okay, maybe someone could put the kibosh on something.
Right.
Maybe there was a smuggling ring or not, but I feel like something sinister happened.
Yes.
Maybe it escalated to a death. Either way, something was happening intentionally on that road, and the rest will remain a mystery. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I think I end on it being a conspiracy. Someone ran out with some plutonium, she was onto it type of thing, and then just rest is history. Kind of what I'm looking at right there.
Yeah.
Damn.
Wild case. But this has been the story of Karen Silkwood. Task Force, thank you all so much for listening and enjoying another morbid but intriguing mystery. And man, how many have we done now? 230 some odd mysteries. We're coming up on... Well, hold on a second. I think as of June 3rd, which we're recording ahead of time and my marriage completely skewed my timelines, we're about to hit our 1 year indie-versary, which means we're 1 month away from our 5-year anniversary. So, man, we're out here. But if you want to support the show, you can do so. Get a lot of exclusive access to bonus content, extra shows, peeks behind the scenes, live stuff. We have gameplays. We have Break Room, where you can kind of join us in the conversation as we record it live over at redwebpod.com. It's the #1 support system we have. It is genuinely the way that we are able to continue doing this show and stay afloat. But you can also support the show freely by reviewing us wherever you listen. 5 stars on Spotify, Apple Play. Who knows? Maybe your mom downloads it and you just like write on a piece of paper, I love this, and you hand that to your mom. I don't know. However, keep downloading, Ma. Just however you want to review it. It's a free way to support. So thank you very much.
We appreciate it. And it goes a long way.
Absolutely. But with that said, Fredo, I'll see you right back here next Monday. Hold on, I want to check the dates. See if it's our Indieversary. Oh, the Indieversary Eve for yet another mystery.